Call the meeting to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Berger.
Here.
Trustee Garvey.
Here.
Trustee Zalick.
Here.
Trustee Gieser.
Here.
Trustee Fruzzoloni. Trustee McCarthy.
Here.
Mayor Severino.
Here. Please stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. There a motion to approve our minutes of November 1st, 2021 Village Board meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Trustee McCarthy, seconded by Trustee Gieser. Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Berger.
Aye.
Trustee Garvey.
Aye.
Trustee Zalick.
Aye.
Trustee Gieser.
Aye.
Trustee McCarthy.
Aye.
Under listening posts, we have a representative from the village's auditing firm, Signage, will present the comprehensive annual financial report and management letter for the year ended April 30th, 2021, in accordance with the Public Act 09-0738. These documents are available on the village website and carolstream.org. So I will now turn the mic over to our representative from Signage.
Good evening. On behalf of Signage, I'd like to thank the mayor and the members of the board for inviting us to present the report resulting from the village's audit for your year ended April 30th, 2021. The document resulted in the comprehensive annual financial report. And within the comprehensive annual financial report, we'll go into the financial section of the report. If you have it in front of you, it's on page 1. It's on Signage letterhead. And this is where we've given our opinion on the financial statements, which is what we're engaged to do when we're performing an audit. When we perform the audit, we're required to follow 2 sets of standards. One are the auditing standards issued by the AICPA, the American Institute for Certified Public Accountants. And those standards tell us the types of procedures we need to perform when we're conducting our audit. The second set of standards are the financial reporting standards, and those come from the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB. And GASB sets the rules for financial statements for local governments such as the village. Once we follow those 2 sets of standards, we can then give an opinion on the financial statements. We're pleased to present an unmodified opinion, and what that means is that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, free of material misstatement. And this is the highest level of opinion that you can receive on your financial statements. Within the opinion, if you turn to the 3rd page, there's a paragraph there on the 3rd page that talks about other reporting required by government auditing standards. During this fiscal year, the village expended more than $750,000 in federal expenditures. Therefore, a separate compliance audit of those federal grant dollars was required. During the fiscal year, the village did expend just under $2.3 million in federal funds. Just under $2 million of those were COVID-19 funds received through DuPage County. As part of that separate compliance audit, there was a separate document issued called the Single Audit Report, and in that report, we issued 2 unmodified or clean opinions as well. The first was on the village's compliance with laws and regulations that could have a material impact on your financial statements. That was unmodified. And then we're also required to test what the federal government defines as major funds. This year, your major fund to be tested was the COVID-19 fund. Those funds, we then issued an unmodified opinion on your compliance with the rules related to the use of the COVID-19 funds. And no findings or question costs were presented either. So a clean opinion there as well. Finally, within the comprehensive annual financial report, in the back of the report, about page 127, is the opinion we gave on the village's compliance with your TIF district, so with your compliance with laws and regulations related to the TIF. Just past the independent auditor's report is the management discussion and analysis. This is the executive summary of the report. If you don't have a chance to read the entire comprehensive annual financial report, I would encourage you to read the MD&A. It is prepared by the village. It's the one place in your financial statements that you get to give an explanation of your own financial statements. And definitely, the financials were very unique in FY21. The unknown of the pandemic, then resulting in additional dollars after the village had scaled back its budget. So the financials did definitely require some explanation this year. Just past one financial statement to bring to your attention, which is basically the results of your general fund, page 11. So you're out of the MD&A, and then you're on regular page number 11, shows the revenues and expenditures for the fiscal year. You did have $2 million in one-time revenues, essentially, resulting in an increase in your general fund balance of $4.3 million. You were then able to move dollars over to capital projects and to your equipment replacement fund. So ultimately then, based on those decisions of the village board, you did have a decrease in your fund balance in the general fund of just under $3 million. Your unassigned fund balance or reserves at the end of the year was right within the 25 to 50% of your budgeted amount in accordance with your fund balance policy. One other place to look at in the financial statements is to your pension funds and how did they do for the year. Page 63 is information related to the contributions you made to the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. And each and every month, you pay to IMRF the 4.5% that comes out of employees' checks, plus the rate that the actuaries at IMRF determined for the village. In this particular fiscal year, it was just under 14%. The budgetary impact of $1,038,000, right on top of what's required. Statutorily, you're putting in exactly what's required to be funded to IMRF. Page 64 has information summarized for IMRF as well for the financial results. The bottom line went from 89% funded to 95% funded through December 31st, 2020, which is IMRF's fiscal year end. The information presented here is 83% of the total, with the other 17% going to the library based on the allocation report that we prepared. The following page is the employer contributions for the police pension fund, and you can see that the village is contributing exactly what the independent actuary has recommended each of the last 10 fiscal years. And then how did the police pension fund perform based on the actuary results? Facing pages 66 and 67. You see the percent funded on a market value basis went from 62% to 72% during the fiscal year. A really good year in the markets, and this is based on market value. So over the last 5 years, you've went from 59% funded to just under 72% funded. So doing exactly what is required in terms of pension funding. The last page to bring to your attention is on the following page, page 68, which is the schedule of investment returns for the police pension fund. You can see during the fiscal year, the return on investments for the pension fund was just under 23%. The actuary assumes a 7% rate of return, so you can see over the last 7 years, you've achieved that goal in over half the years, which is also what the actuary would assume, is that in some years you will be above that 7, some years below. These are the highlights that I put together for you on the document this evening. The audit went smoothly, and we received all the information we requested on a timely basis. Village's staff is very professional and easy to work with. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Miller, I heard you talking down there while he was making his presentation. That was my fault.
Well, do you actually run into some villages when you do this, not asking to name names, that don't get a unmodified opinion?
So that's a really good question. So the easiest way to answer that question is when we're performing the audit, there's certain adjustments to the financial statements that you might expect to occur. And if you, in the document provided to the board this evening, the number of adjustments that happened during the audit this year was 1. That is very unusual. In order to not receive an unmodified opinion, typically what's going to happen is either a municipality doesn't have the records to support the numbers, so they could have a modification to their opinion because they just don't have the documentation, or if they disagreed with one of the adjustments we proposed to the financial statements. So if you were to go to other municipalities, you'd typically see several pages of adjustments when you don't have a professional finance department like the village does. So my point in making this is there's a lot of adjustments that the village makes to the financial statements to get ready for the audit. It's a lot of work getting ready for the audit. We ask for a lot of documentation. But the other thing then that you realize is that during the year, you're relying on the financial information that you're provided by the finance department and management to make decisions throughout the fiscal year. And that tells you that you're getting that information throughout the year when there's not adjustments coming from the auditor at the end of the year.
Perfect.
Very good question.
Good job as usual. How was he to work with? How's John to work with?
John's good to work with. It's a little challenging during the pandemic because in the past, we'd be out here all the time, and there's a lot more Zoom calls and a lot more electronic transfers of documents, so it's a little more challenging for both the village staff and our team, but I think everyone's adapted very well.
Thank you. It makes me feel better knowing you've done your wonderful job that you usually do. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that, and we enjoy working with the village.
Thank you.
And it's important that we get that
Yes.
external,
Vote of confidence.
yeah.
John, well done, your department, as always.
We know when John's smiling, that means he's got money, so that fits. We don't need to see it on paper. It's like, but thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good
Thank
job. Thank you. I should have done this at the beginning of the meeting, and I really feel bad. But we had someone in Wayne Township that passed away. Very sad situation, a young person, in my standards, a young person. And Jackie Hayden has been a trustee for a while with Wayne Township, a very, very respected person, and did a wonderful job. She happened to go into the hospital the same day that my wife and I were there, and she told me to stay away from her because she didn't feel good. And she stayed. My wife ended up going home, and 4 days later, my wife ended back up in the hospital. I tried to see her a few times, but because she had COVID, they would not let anybody in. So, and of course, my wife was in lockdown with something else, so. But I really feel bad. I feel, being able to see her at the hospital and under those conditions, she was more concerned about me, trying to track me down, even though we were no more than 15 feet close to each other. Through another mayor, got my phone number, which I thought she had, and wanted to know if I felt okay. And unfortunately, she never came out of the hospital. She went on a ventilator and passed away, and this morning they had the funeral for her. So I judge funerals by how many people show up, and the church was jam-packed with people, and a lot of teary-eyed people. 59 years old is way too young to die, and I hope she rests in peace, and I'd like a moment of silence if we could. Thank you. We have no addresses from the audience tonight. We have no electronic. No one's interested in talking to us?
Not tonight.
What happens,
Rachel.
John, when you got money, nobody cares. As long as it's, keep the money rolling, John. Okay. So then we will go. Is there a motion to establish a consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by trustee McCarthy, seconded by trustee Geezer. Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Berger.
Aye.
Trustee Garvey.
Aye.
Trustee Zalick.
Aye.
Trustee Geezer.
Aye.
Trustee McCarthy.
Aye.
Madam Clerk, would you please read what is on the consent agenda?
Certainly. Staff reports and recommendations. Presentation of preliminary plan for the Klein Creek Stabilization Section 3 project from Illini Drive to Mitchell Lakes Park.
That's off, right?
Okay, we'll pull that off the agenda. Make a separate presentation. Receipt of the comprehensive annual financial report and auditor's communication to the Board of Trustees of the Village of Carroll Stream for the year ended April 30th, 2021.
Received.
Award of a contract to GovTemps USA to staff the office manager position within the Administration Department for the period of January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022 for $87,474.19.
Yes.
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 Award of a contract to GovTemps USA in fulfilling the support requirements of the Intergovernmental Agreement for Information Technology Services with the Carroll Stream Library approved on May 7th, 2018.
Yes.
Yes.
Amendment to the Village of Carroll Stream's Personnel Manual, Chapter 1J, with regard to solicitation or distribution of printed materials.
Yes.
Yes.
Approval of change order number 1 and final payment to SKC Construction, Inc. in the amount of $66,515.80 for the 2021 Crackville project.
Yes.
Yes.
Sanitary Sewer Extension 250 North Gary Avenue, approval of change order number 3 in the amount of $46,279.47 for disposal of contaminated material and OSHA compliance.
Yes.
Yes.
Approval of a memorandum of understanding between the Village of Carroll Stream and DuPage Public Safety Communications.
Yes.
Yes.
Ordinances. Ordinance amending Chapter 8, Article 1 of the Carroll Stream Traffic Code, adoption of provisions of the Illinois Vehicle Code and Child Passenger Protection Act by reference.
Yes. Thank you.
That is ordinance number 2021-11-54. Ordinance adopting amendments to Chapter 1 Administration, Chapter 2 Applications, and Chapter 3 Examinations Original Appointments to the rules and regulations of the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners.
Yes. Yes.
That is ordinance number 2021-11-55. New business. Approval and waiver of the fee for the December 3rd, 2021 holiday tree lighting to amplify pre-recorded and live music outdoors at the Ross Ferraro Town Center.
Yes.
Payment of bills. Regular bills, November 2nd, 2021 through November 15th, 2021.
Yes.
Yes.
Addendum warrants, November 2nd, 2021 through November 15th, 2021.
Received.
Treasurer's report, revenue, expenditure statements, and balance sheet for the month ended October 31st, 2021.
Received.
And that concludes the items on the consent agenda.
Is there a motion to put those items on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by trustee Zalick, seconded by
Second.
trustee Berger. Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Berger.
Aye.
Trustee Garvey.
Aye.
Trustee Zalick.
Aye.
Trustee Gieser.
Aye.
Trustee McCarthy.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve those items, or, I'm sorry, is there a motion to approve those items by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by trustee McCarthy, seconded by trustee Garvey. Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Berger.
Aye.
Trustee Garvey.
Aye.
Trustee Zalick.
Aye.
Trustee Gieser.
Aye.
Trustee McCarthy.
Aye.
Okay, we have to circle back. We're going to presentation. This is the second half of the presentation? Not quite.
Yes, it is. It's the second presentation. The reason we're doing this is because of grant funding, and we were lucky enough to get DuPage River Salt Creek Work Group grant for downstream of the treatment plant, which is about 1,600 feet. And so we had to find a new location for those IEPA funds that we originally got for this Section 1. So we found a perfect section, 1,600 feet, which is between Illini Drive north to Mitchell Lakes Park. And today we're going to talk about how that fits in. I have to mention that this is not in next year's capital plan, so it's something we have to talk about in the budget. This was going to be, this section, Section 3, was going to be in the following year's budget. And because of this grant funding, now we're pushing it up and doing it with the Section 1 area. So with that, if you have any questions on the Section 1 from last week, if you had a chance to look at the presentation again, and we can certainly answer those questions first before Greg gets started into Section 3. So if not, we'll go ahead and get started.
Well, I have one quick question then.
Sure.
So you gave us the presentation last meeting about Thunderbird to Coon Road. Today we'll get the presentation from Illini to Mitchell Lakes. But we have that section, which is listed as Section 2, between Illini and Thunderbird. Is there any issues with doing those and leaving the gap? Or is you're doing these because of receiving the grant funding and the way you receive the grant?
Yeah, part of it is because that section is unfunded. It doesn't qualify for any grants. We're going to try and get some grant funding for it. As a matter of fact, this Friday, there's a submittal. But it doesn't have the same environmental benefits as the North Section 3 and the Southern Section 1 do. There's no room in between the homes to create wetlands or riparian environment or these things that help qualify for the IEPA, the grant funding. So it's kind of sitting there by itself right now, and we're discussing that right now as to whether it will cause any issues with the other sections. But it might increase our chances of obtaining grant funding because it is connecting two pieces. So that's to be determined.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a complicated answer. I think because we're set off by bridges, ending at each section, they are kind of isolated. But that doesn't mean that as Section 4 and Section 2 are roads, that soil doesn't come into Section 1 and would, have an effect. That's certainly a long-term process, so it's not an immediate concern. But, the fact that we would leave Section 2 as a gap is one of the points that we're trying to make when we go in for the grant application and say, hey, we've stabilized here, we've stabilized down here. We've got this missing gap here. It's to make a nice ecological connection and make sure that stabilization is good in the long run. We could really use the money to do this section too. So we're going to make that case, but I certainly wouldn't be concerned if we had to wait.
Okay, thank you.
And at the next meeting, we will be discussing Section 2 and Section 4, which are kind of in the conceptual design stages right now, as opposed to Section 1 and 3, which we actually are have plans that we can bid and get contracts on.
Okay. With that, I guess I'll get started. So this is meeting number 2. And I want to go over the funding just one more time because it is kind of complicated. So we went in to the IEPA for Section 1, 1A and 1B, and we got that funding. After that, the DRCW agreed to help us fund half of that. So from the wastewater treatment plant outfall and down. So in working with the IEPA, we could move that portion of 1A somewhere else on Klein Creek. Now, that section had a lot of wetland creation, and that was one of the main reasons why we got that grant. So we had to create wetlands somewhere else. In the overall plan that we did back in 2016, Mitchell Lakes was where we were going to do a lot of wetland creation. So initially, we looked at doing whatever was DRSCW's and throwing that into Mitchell Lakes. But as we were investigating Section 3, and as we reached out to the library and to the Park District, as I'll show you later, the opportunity to create that wetland on those two little green squares there came up, and it made sense that we would just go with this section and stabilize it with that money. So, sort of a long-winded answer as to why we got to Section 3, but this is the existing conditions, and I'm going to sit on this slide just a little bit because it's pretty busy. So the Mitchell Lakes, which is the big detention up there, is online detention. So that used to be a creek, and then when Western Trails came in, that became detention for Western Trails. So there was actually a restriction right at that Mitchell Lakes outfall that as the water, from a rain event comes in, it's slowed down, it fills up Mitchell Lakes, and then slowly recedes. So that's just one giant detention basin that we're working on. That's where we'll start the project, and then we're going to go down to Illini Bridge, which is where we'll end it. In between there is Armstrong Park, obviously on the left, and the library, which is there in the middle right. The Armstrong Park, I put in a bunch of arrows there. It's, I think it's worth going over just briefly. You've got a lower basin and an upper basin. So the lower basin is right next to the creek. And right at the north end is that arrow coming in. That's where if the water gets up high enough, it's going to go into that lower basin. Then it's going to trigger the pumps, and the pumps are going to bring it into that upper basin. And it's going to keep pumping until it's triggered. And then that gets exited out the lower left corner through a pipe that goes all the way to the fire station. The whole concept of that largely is that Klein Creek doesn't have the conveyance. It's too small. So if we can take that water and pump it around that restriction, then we won't flood as much. So that's the basic gist of how Armstrong Park works. So then they've spent a lot of money in that lower basin, making that a nice wetland, vegetated bottom, and that sort of is going to fit into with what we're going to do as well with our wetland creations at what's in the red down at the bottom, the Park District's maintenance shed and yard, and then up in the north of the library, that's where we would do the other wetland creation. And then the final thing on that slide is there's a bunch of flow arrows, those blue arrows. It just kind of shows you, so in the lower right, over at the Village Hall, that's taking water all the way from Schmale. And then you've got up at the top of Mitchell Lakes, that's taking water all the way from Stratford Square. And then in the upper left, all that water is coming down from Glenbard North High School. And then even more from the west. So it's quite the convergence of all the tributary area in one spot. So pretty significant. So I just wanted to zoom in a little bit more. The property ownership is a little bit goofy. We still have village-owned property, which is in that central portion. I believe just to the west of it, to the left, that Park District property, that was flipped as part of Armstrong Park. So when the county came in and took that property, that used to be village property, and that was part of the deal to flip that. We still have that final little rectangular portion there, and that includes a storm pump station. That's what drains that area that doesn't look drained in the aerial, but that's what drains it and pumps it into Klein Creek.
Looks like the village owns left field and third base.
Yeah?
So let's see if we get this. So I want to start off with a couple of pictures, a couple slides that'll walk us through the existing conditions. So back in May 15th, 2020, we had a pretty decent rain event. This is Mitchell Lakes. So this is the restrictor, is 3 48-inch pipes, and then the Mitchell Lakes path that goes over it. This is the path that they just redid around Mitchell Lakes, so it looks newer than it does there. But you can see, what I'm trying to point out is these vortexes that are created by these pipes just upstream of it. And then I was with my son, who's in the vest, And we saw these two kids, and they were playing there too. He wanted to drop the stick in the vortex as well and watch that get sucked under. It was my favorite thing to do, but when we were done, we got out of there. But it's an area that I think could use some improvements. Certainly, aesthetically, it's not that great. And then, just this concept of a safety issue is something that would be nice to address. And I moved down there, so in the upper left is where you would go to Mitchell Lakes and the Bluff Drive apartment buildings. And it's the top one is a panoramic, so you're walking along the floodplain compensatory storage that's north of the library, and then their new gazebo, and then you get to the other side of the building as you walk towards the library bridge. And what I'm showing in the two left pictures are views from either end of how the water spills from Klein Creek into that compensatory storage area. So that's, frequently underwater. Susan, who's here, is, when she started as a director, she was always seeing mud, in her lobby, and she didn't understand where that was coming from until she realized it was the people that were, hiking through here, so she threw some gravel down there to get at least something down so people can walk on it. And but north of there is a sidewalk that I'll talk about later. And finally, as you get to the west side of the library, that's where people would then continue to walk. And in the panoramic on the top to the left, you can see the transformers for the building, and then a couple feet before you get to the slope. And so that's kind of a dangerous area that people have to traverse, to get to the front of the building. And so when we first met with Susan about, this project, she talked about this path and the concerns that she has and how we could incorporate that into, our stream bank stabilization. So this is kind of the high-level overview that sort of addresses all those three things. So you have the blue, which is what we're looking at proposing to replace the Mitchell Lakes pipes. So instead of those three pipes, we would pull those out, and we would put in a structure that looks more like what I have there in the proposed, something attractive, something natural. The intent of that is it doesn't have to be a very big opening, so it's relatively inexpensive to build. And we would keep the bottom open, because what we're trying to do is have fish and the ecology connected. So this would allow fish and everything that we're doing in this stream to continue on, into the lakes above, and there'd be no more impediment for that passage. We would also then take that path that right now goes in the red and is parallel, to the other path to the west. We would be able to cross it and make a connection there so people can start using that north-south on the west end. Because what we're looking at doing is working with the apartment complex to see whether or not they actually want to keep that sidewalk. And that sidewalk is that orange dash line right there. So after I do this, I'm going to be sending the management company this presentation so that they can take a look at it. But it's a sidewalk to nowhere. It's a sidewalk that we don't own. It's private. There's no easement. In fact, we don't have an easement for the drainage of the creek either, which is also partially in our property. So luckily, what we're able to do is just kind of shift the creek to the west a little into our property in the village. And so we're completely out of their property. We don't need any easements from them. At the same time, we could say, well, we could help you out with this, path. If you don't want it, we can take it out. I think if it was, my opinion, we would take it out because it's a sidewalk to nowhere. We've looked at taking that south and keeping that going to the library. The problem is we're putting our wetland right there where I had showed you where the floodplain, kind of spills over the banks and then gets into the floodplain area. So that's an ideal spot for the wetland, and we're putting it there. So to try to get the path, through that area, and it's got to be raised enough so it doesn't flood that much, was kind of problematic. So it's sort of scenario B, really. But what we will do is put in a sidewalk in purple that's west of the library. That is something that, as Susan works on what she's doing there in the north end, and this is just a zoomed in area of the wetland. Yeah, let me go back to this one. So that's that purple path. Susan has, the ideas for the back area, and it's a storybook walk is one of her ideas, and so, having some kind of path from the front to the back that doesn't have to take you through the library would be nice, and then it creates like a nice overlook of the stream bank stabilization that we're doing. And so we also have to create this educational signage. So Susan and I are working on that blue dashed area along the west side of the library as where we would put that signage. And, make something nice that we could combine both an educational component for the library to use and then something that we have to use to talk about stream bank stabilization. And then you're overlooking that area too. So I will say that section, yeah, go ahead.
I may be, I don't know, confused here. So you would have potentially, you would get rid of the sidewalk along the apartment complex,
Potentially.
potentially, because you say it goes to nowhere and it's going to lead into where you're going to create the wetland, correct? But you're going to create a path going north into her story area.
Yeah.
Are people from the north, from the apartments going, will they have a path to get to the library? Or will they have to cross the creek to get around?
Yeah, so the idea would be to make this connection so that people can take this path here.
The new crossing.
Yeah, the new crossing. So, yeah, the idea is to not have parallel paths,
Yeah.
I guess, would be the benefit. And then if they're open to it and they want to take that sidewalk out with a little bit of landscaping at the north end here, a little bit of landscaping here, well, it's a little laggy. So right there at the blue, a little bit of landscaping there, and then extending the fence a couple sections at the south end. And then you have a nice turfed area. That's going to look more like what it should be, which is sort of the communal space for the apartments, right? And I think you'd feel more like you're walking through somebody's backyard than you do now when you have a sidewalk there. But that stuff is all, we're still, discussing.
Yes.
I mean, the major design aspects of it is moving forward at a pretty good clip, but this kind of stuff is malleable. So if there's more, discussions that we want to do on that, there's plenty of time. So we needed to create 1.4 acres of wetland. When we first talked to Susan, she had ideas for what to do in the north area here. So she was, reticent to have too much of that lost to wetlands. So we squeezed as much as we could out of a couple other spots, and we're just doing 0.3 acres there. So it's basically the west building line extended, and I think that's going to work for everybody really well. Here, we met with the Arc District, and if you're not aware, that had a lot of storage there just even a few years ago. And Shane and Jim have been pulling stuff out of there, knowing that it's in a floodplain, which you can see, and it's also technically in a floodway. So having it there is technically not legal. But they've been pulling it out voluntarily, and now there's hardly anything left except for some bleachers and their maintenance shed. So they were fully open to, using this area for wetland creation, and we would just work with them to move that shed, somewhere else. Right now, that's a location that we're looking at doing. So we're going to take the creek and we're going to remeander it a little bit and make some wetland, and that'll pull it away from these Hiawatha properties, and that's going to reduce the retaining wall that we would have needed had we not had this property to search But finally, there's only so much we can do as far as having retaining wall. These are the easements that we have and the properties that we're dealing with. So Hiawatha on the right and one single Illini Drive property on the left. And these have drainage easements. And so we'll put this retaining wall right up against that easement, and then we'll have plenty of space to be able to do our stream bank stabilization in between. So you can see in the two, pictures there, the Hiawatha residence, I circled that area. That's a recent erosion slide that just happened. And then you can see kind of on the right and the left, those are snags from those, invasive trees that like to reach down into the open skylight as far as they can, and then they end up grabbing stuff that gets caught, and then it's really hard for us to get in there and clean that out. So all these trees would be out, and it'd be just grasses and flowers. That stuff is, doesn't have that same issue as the trees and the branches does.
There's going to be no jogging path or walking path where the yellow is, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Just a retaining wall so that, so 180 Kehoe in front of Antunes, that was sort of our pilot project for this. So you'll see on top of it, we can put grass all the way up to the front of it. I'm sure they'll want to put fences back. And we probably have to do a safety fence if it gets to a certain height. And then they would just have that usable space, right? That would be their yard. And then in front of it, we would have, this vegetated shelf, what we call it, and then the toe. And that just helps it get through the permitting process, because having a wall right up against the water line is not what they want. So this creates a little bit of a, habitat area. And,
Would there have to be a fence along that retaining wall for all those properties?
yeah,
And the village would have to put it up?
it's a safety issue. So this is the same schedule that I showed before. So once again, at the end of the year, we're going to be submitting roughly this design, so we're on schedule with that. Draft land owner agreements, so we've got all the easements we need except for those 680 Bluff property, and we can move it away from them, don't need it. So really just some temporary easements when it comes to, finishing everything off just inside their property. But that's not part of they're looking for more final, if you're taking an easement or taking right away. Temporary stuff is not part of that deadline. And then, we're working with Susan on something interesting at the library. That's more than just a sign.
Nice.
With that,
What I would like to see is engineering, maybe work with TIA to take some pictures as we progress and put them on the Facebook page to let people see what we're doing rather than until it's completely done. Maybe work through.
And why we're doing it.
While we're doing it every 2 or 3 weeks, you could take maybe a series of pictures, a little comment, and have her post it on our Facebook page.
yeah.
So the residents could see what's going on. Otherwise, we'll all be getting calls, what are they doing with the heavy equipment? What are they doing?
Right.
Is the creek flooding? Is it like
My
so?
yard.
To keep them up, we can stay one step ahead by doing that.
And one other cool thing is when I do a grants application to DuPage County, they also have a staff person that can fly a drone. I'm going to ask them if they can fly a drone prior and during construction and then after construction, so we can have a nice marketing type of thing that we can do.
Great idea, yeah.
Now, the safety fence that's got to go up, how tall does that have to be?
Safety fence?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's 5 feet. It's going to look like the safety fences that we
On Gary?
carry,
Yeah,
and almost every bridge that we have
right.
has those parallel pipes.
Oh, you absolutely need it. I mean, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well, thank you.
Very nice job. Thank you. Mr. Cleveland, thank you. Your whole department, thank you.
It's a wild meeting, financial audit and stream bank stabilization.
Money's no problem, John's got it all. So we don't have to put that's already on, correct? It was just information?
Correct.
Okay. Being Susan Westgate is here, thank you for the book. reporter. This is a book that's put out on libraries. I'm ashamed to say it, that I have stayed away from the library for a long time, and about 3 weeks ago, I went in and I got the tour of the library, and I am absolutely astounded. If somebody would have blindfolded me and took me in there and said, "Where are you?" I couldn't even begin to tell them. When I think of what you did there with the amount of money that you had to work with, and how the wonderful job that was done with that amount of money, and when I look at what they wanted to do on a piece of property and spend millions more, I am absolutely amazed. Anybody that hasn't seen the library, I would suggest to go. If you lived in this town for a long time or a short period of time, go in and take a look at what they've done here. These pictures they're beautiful, but they don't do it anywhere near the justice of walking through there with the outdoor cafe period, with the tables and chairs on the outside. I am absolutely flabbergasted at what you did, and very proud to say that that library is in our town. So thank you, Susan.
They kept it open during the construction, too.
Pardon me?
They kept the library open during that construction.
Yeah, well, that was another thing. They got to stay open. But when I think of what they wanted to spend back in the early days with a piece of property and spend all the millions, and what you did with what you had to work with, saved this village and taxpayers a tremendous amount of money. And I really appreciate that, and I know our board does too. Thank you. So with that, report officers. Trustee Berger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John, a uneventful financial audit is a beautiful thing. Those are words I've never spoken before, but it's very true. So congratulations to you and the team. I would like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, because we won't be back here before then. A happy and safe Thanksgiving. We always have to throw safe in these days with this pandemic going on. And also, I hope to see everybody out at the park on December 3rd for the tree lighting. We're going to have some musicians from the high school there that'll be performing, so I think that'll be a nice touch with some live music out there, and I will be out there, and I'll probably bring a camera.
Shocking.
Now you're talking.
So with that concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Berger. Trustee Garvey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank everyone that came to the Veterans Day presentation, first of all, and to wish everyone happy Thanksgiving. But I also want to commend Mr. Batek on the financial report, especially the narrative part. I haven't really got through the whole document yet. But, I think it was really well written, very concise, very cogent, rational. When I judge books or movies or dense documents like this, I really appreciate it when, as my brain works through what I'm being presented with, the question pops up in my mind, and the very next paragraph or the very next scene answers that question. And that's what this narrative did for me. So I really appreciate the authorship that you presented here. It was very well done. And that's the end of my report.
Garvey? Trustee Zalick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to thank Signage for coming in. It's wonderful to hear how our hardworking staff works with outside agencies. You know, it makes us look really good. And, you know, you work with our finance department. John, great job. And then the stabilization, you're working with Park District, you're working with the library, so it makes us look really good how professional and hardworking you guys are. So keep up the good work on that. I want to congratulate Glenbard North for making the football quarterfinals. Good year and very competitive. Happy Thanksgiving to all, and keep military and first responders in your thoughts and prayers. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Zalick. That was very nice. Trustee Gieser?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Holiday decorating contest is up and running. It's a little early for people to put up their decorations, but we're going to have some 50-degree days this week, so maybe people will start putting things up. You can nominate by going to decorating contest at carolstream.org. The nominations will be taken until Friday, 5 p.m. on December 17th. The judges will then swarm the community and judge all the nominated homes. And let's make this, we had a great Halloween. Let's make this a great Christmas season as well. So, and I know we can do it. Couple other things. I noticed that the village is doing a thing, and maybe Phil, you can update us a little bit about this. Hydrant Heroes. Can you tell us a moment what Hydrant Heroes are?
Yes, we've seen in other communities how residents enjoy adopting a hydrant, or what we're calling it being a hydrant hero, where during the winter, they take on the responsibility for shoveling out around a fire hydrant in front of or near their home. And through Tia's work and IT, we've been able to produce a map, an interactive map that has all the village's hydrants represented. And residents can simply go to the website, find their way to that opportunity, select the hydrant they want. They can name their hydrant. We will have editorial control over the names. But yeah, it's an excellent way to both get the word out, to make people think about maybe shoveling around their hydrant. So the fire department never has to look for them or spend their time getting to them. And have a little fun with your family. And the information will be available on the website.
Well, it's something we as board members have talked about for years, and most of us, if we have hydrants in front of our house, take care of them. But I went to the website. It was very easy to click on and give the address and find the number of the hydrant, and then and name it something unspeakable that you'll change. So, but thank you for doing that. And with the snow last weekend, or over the weekend, you know, it's coming. So, also coming, Christmas sharing is coming up. Go to the website if you want to, if you need to sign up for it, or you want to donate. And I too want to thank the VFW for holding their Veterans Day ceremony. I was there, the mayor was there, Trustee Berger, Trustee Zalick, Trustee Garvey. So that was a wonderful day to spend some times with those who served our nation. And the mayor and I also attended a couple ceremonies at Evergreen and Benjamin. So it's terrific that some of the schools are still able to and willing to spend time celebrating the veterans. So, and I would like to end by saying Happy Thanksgiving, and hope you have a chance to spend the day with your family, your friends, and your loved ones. Just do it safely. That's my report.
Thank you, Trustee Geiser. Very well said. Trustee McCarthy.
Again, Signage and our accounting, our financial department, great job, as always. Every year, I wish you guys had a little bit more of a sense of humor, because every time we get those envelopes, I want to write something in there and have a little fun with it, but I know you accounting people don't have a sense of humor when it comes to that, so I've chosen not to do it. Congratulations to Glenbard North. That was a good season. I did not expect that out of them to get to the corner, so great quarterfinals, so great job. The Carroll Stream Panthers 11U won their Super Bowl the same day, this past Saturday, so congratulations to them. And we, right after Halloween, we did the pumpkin and electronics recycling. The pumpkin, it was how many tons?
We collected over almost 9 tons
Almost 9 tons of pumpkins.
for composting.
That's a lot of pumpkin.
It is.
And that saves it from going to the landfill, which of course, again, helps our environment. So it's a win-win all the way around.
Now I know why I was sore.
You threw all those, you see, 9 tons.
A lot of work.
Holiday season started, Thanksgiving's coming up. It's been a tough couple of years for a lot of people. This is a great year to maybe reach out to family or friends maybe you haven't in a while and say, hey, if we can do it safely, why don't you come over for Thanksgiving dinner, or why don't you come over for Christmas Eve, or let's find a way to get together and touch base, just say hi and make sure everybody's okay. it's been tough the last couple of years with a number of people. So I think maybe it's time we start reaching back out and letting people know how we feel. About a week and a half ago, I had the honor of being at a organizational meeting of the Chicago Area Italian-American Charitable Organization.
Oh.
Pretty good, huh? And watched them give out 21 scholarships, and then a number of special donations, and one of them was to my grandchildren for medical expenses. And I, again, want to say thank you very much to both Chaco and the Dominic Savarino Foundation. It was heartwarming, and not just for us, watching them do it to everybody else, and it's just always good to see great people who are ready to help people. So thank you and the whole group. And with that, I will end my report.
Thank you, Trustee McCarthy. You're going to make me cry. Our village clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just be very brief. Just wanted to report that I attended last week a North-Northwest Municipal Clerks Association meeting and with my deputy clerk in Hanover Park. And it was a great way to network and meet more clerks outside of DuPage County. It was basically Lake County and Cook County clerks. So it's nice to know we have this big support network of municipal clerks who are there to help each other and help develop best practices and so forth. So that was a great meeting. And then other than that, I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. And remember to shop your local Carroll Street grocers for all your Thanksgiving dinner needs. That's all.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Rhodes, our village attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really don't have a report tonight other than just to wish everyone a very happy and healthy Thanksgiving this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Muller, village manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Trustee McCarthy mentioned the pumpkins that were recycled. We also recycled over 2 tons of electronics and as well as textiles and clothing, which will be recycled and reused. Just a reminder that free leaf pickup is Thanksgiving week, the week of November 22nd. And there will be a 1-day pickup delay for Thursday and Friday pickup. And regarding Thanksgiving, village offices will be closed on Thursday, November 25th, and Friday, November 26th, in observance of the Thanksgiving holiday. And as always, our hardworking police department will be open for business. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Muller. Well, we covered just about everything. There isn't much left. Thank you to Signage and our accounting department for doing another wonderful job. A lot of good things are happening in town. All we got to do is just everybody stay safe and try to get through these holidays. I'd like to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving. Have a good, and I agree with Trustee McCarthy said, try and spend some time with the people you love because you don't know how long they're going to be around. This funeral this morning was terrible for me. I've attended 3 of them in the last week. I got another one, a good friend of mine died from the Naperville area that is just, anybody that knew Mike Pruder and I have been friends for over 50 years. We lobbied together in Springfield in the early days, in my vending early days, as lobbyists down in Springfield working together for the association. And he just passed away, and you think you know how everybody feels until they put his picture on Facebook, and then it just exploded with all of his friends about how much they missed him and how much all the story after story. I had lunch with him about 4 weeks ago. He called me, and we talked about, and said, that's it, come tomorrow. We went to the Village Tavern and spent 3 hours together. So I feel, again, it's for some reason, somebody is putting me together with people that are not doing very well, which is, I'm glad it's hard to explain. I've been to so many wakes and funerals in this year and lost so many friends. I guess it's the age group that I'm in, but when you see a 59-year-old pass away, then you start to worry that what is happening here. So don't be afraid to show your love to your family and your friends. Those babies that Matt McCarthy's talking about, his 2 grandkids, we fell in love with them. We were fortunate fortunate enough to be at this kid's wedding when they got married. We were there when they got baptized. We got to hold them, and I think my wife and I both fell in love with them at that point. So that night was big. We had about 400 people there at the dinner, and Matt and his family brought the 2 babies, and everybody fell in love with them as we did. They couldn't do enough for them. I mean, they were just, and for like 3 hours, 2 of the greatest little kids, when you look at the problems the one has, they were wonderful the whole time that they were there. And you could see how everybody just reached out. That same night, being you brought it up, the police officer that got shot in the eye and when Officer French got killed, we gave him money. We felt that they're not doing enough for him. They weren't doing enough for him. The group that I run with, a lot of them were ex-sheriffs and elected officials and just people that are in business, and some that just did nothing. But all the money that we get, we give away. We don't have any brick and mortar, so it makes it easy to give that many scholarships away. But it was special. That night was special. Again, and beside the police officer, we gave a soldier a big chunk of money that was released from the base that he was on after all of his disabilities they felt were done, and they released him. What you don't realize is he lived on the base. When they released him, he had no place to go. So we found that out. We brought him and his wife and his daughter in, and we honored them. And one of the guys in the audience, this is the group that I run with that are, I don't know who it was, and I don't know why he did it, but this happens frequently. As soon as the presentation was done, he walked over and he said, I have a place you can come and live until you find a place, and I don't care how long you stay, for free. I mean, it makes me feel good to know that I run with a group of guys that really, really care. In another week, we'll do 600 baskets of love. It's about 40,000 pounds of food, and it all goes to the food banks. It goes to charitable groups, churches, shelters, battered and abused shelters. It'll go where any of the priests, or not only in this area, all of DuPage County and some in Cook. We do that every year, and we collect toys at Christmas. So, I mean, what Matt got to see, and I really wanted him to come to see what we do, because it's painful sometimes to keep asking people for money and for getting ads and ad books, and you saw the ad book that we had.
Oh, it's amazing.
The ad book is amazing. I mean, the people that give money and buy ads. But there's a lot of good people out there, and we got to remember that. There's a lot of good people. We see the bad things, but we never see the good things. And the bad things are stuff that it seems like it sticks with the news people, and the good things, nobody cares about. Not that anybody's looking for nobody's looking for any accolades like you did a great job. That's not it. It seems like they just levitate to what's bad and write that news on what's bad. You get tired of hearing it after a while. So with that, thank you, Trustee Geiser. We actually did 3 veterans things together. One, you beat me to it, and I took the second round. You took the first round with the mayor from West Chicago. Ruben Panetta was with Trustee Geiser at Benjamin. Then I took the second one at Benjamin. But we got to do all 3 of the veterans things, which was very nice to get those to get them through. Wish we could have done it outside with all of the work that went into building that, but the Park District was nice enough to let us use the inside, and it went very well. And I want to thank the police department and fire department, because there was a lot of the police and fire that showed up, and that makes a big difference for that handful, and I mean handful of veterans that were there. They're a dying breed. I feel bad that I look at them every year, there's 1 or 2 less, and it seems like the younger guys don't want to get involved, and I guess I could understand that. That's their option. But these veterans are only going to be able to do so much, especially at the American Legion and the VFW, and I look at them, and they're all you know, in their 70s and 80s and 90s, and it's like, this isn't going to go on forever. If somebody doesn't pick up the torch and carry it for them, it'll just be something that, what was it, not what it is. And that's important, because we're free. And if the presentation that they put on that we got to see at Evergreen is phenomenal. with Miss Morgano, the music instructor. She's like the Energizer Bunny with those kids. And if not, I'd love to be able to tape that and put it on the website to show them what, my theory is the kids are our future, and what we do with them now is how they're going to be when they get older. And if we don't get them while they're young enough, and they understand what this country's about, how we got where we are, the good things and the bad things. You can't just worry about the good things, and you can't keep bringing up the bad things. These kids are our future. Someday, as Trustee Geezer sits up here, grew up in this town. I make jokes about Joe Brynick grew up in this town, and he was our village manager after all them years. So some of us have been around a long time. Some like not to leave. They like it here so much, and I'm glad that they do. So everyone have a happy Thanksgiving. Love somebody, and show a little love to somebody maybe that you don't talk to. Pick up the phone and call them. I'm sure they'd appreciate it. Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by trustee McCarthy, seconded by trustee Geezer. Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Berger.
Aye.
Trustee Garvey.
Aye.
Trustee Zalick.
Aye.
Trustee Geezer.
Aye.
Trustee McCarthy.
Meeting's adjourned.